My name's Eric. Hi. I'm not an alcoholic, so I'm not going to go with that part. But anyways, my name's Eric. Normally I'm up here and helping to lead worship. And today I get to speak to all of you lovely people. Haven't done this a while, feel a little rusty, battling a cold, but we're going to get through it together by the grace of God. So, following what Edgar just said a little bit ago about this new year and all the things that he just spoke about, I was like, oh man, we can just be done. That's sermon closed. We can just walk out the door. That was really beautiful. 2020. I can't even believe we're here. I remember when I was a kid, anybody watch Back to the Future? The movie Back to the Future? 2020. That was like where he was at when he went to go ride like a hoverboard. And the cars were flying. We're not there yet. They haven't figured it out, I guess. But anyway, so we have a new year going on, and I've been reflecting back on the different things and what's taken place over the last 10 years. And I just can't believe how many things I got married. I transferred to a new fire job. I left a fire job, and I started a brand new career at the age of, 38 years old. Lots of things have happened. That's just my life. I'm sure lots of things have happened in your lives in the last 10 years, and it just gives me hope in what's to come, and it kind of makes me excited, a little bit fearful. But I'm just excited about what's coming our way and what's gonna happen. I'm gonna have here my computer out for cheater notes in the event I get lost to where I'm at. So, like I said, in the last 2 years, me and my wife have started this new business. We do excavation, and so it has been, to say whirlwind would be an understatement. We had to buy a bunch of equipment, spend a bunch of money, a bunch of time, and it has been a great, lot of pressure, a lot more pressure than I was used to as far as from running a business standpoint. And so it just kind of overwhelmed me. And I've kept trying to tell my wife the whole time, like as this is going along, honey, it's gonna be okay. Don't worry. Someday we're gonna actually make money back. Someday we'll actually make some of that money back that we spent. And so the whole time, I'm telling her, I'm trying to keep positive with her and tell her everything's gonna be okay. In the back of my mind, the whole time in the back of my mind, I'm like, God, is this gonna work out? Are we really gonna make it out of here? We're gonna be able to climb out of this thing? So I have these things going in the back of my head, and so I had this kind of gnawing at my head that's taking place, and it's just gnawing and gnawing and gnawing, and I'm just becoming so entrenched with all the details of running a business, and then running a family of, I have 4 kids. I don't recommend that for the lighthearted, by the way. Those of you who are gonna have kids are awesome. 4 of them, you need a strong constitution for that one. So anyways, I'm this big ball of stress, right? And pretty soon, I completely lose my focus. And I don't mean I lose my focus on work, because that's all I'm focusing on is on work. But I lose my focus on God. I'm just focused completely on everything else, and I totally lose focus. My alone time with God, you could say it dwindled down substantially. Almost to the point of non-existence. It was very, very challenging for me, and when I hit that point, and I realized I hit that point, and I just to tell you today, I haven't climbed out of that funk completely. I haven't completely climbed out of my dwindled time with God. I wish I could spend a lot more time with God, and I wasn't worrying about all the details of business and all the details of being a father of 4 and all the details of helping in this ministry here. But I want to invite you in to a sermon that was definitely written for me. And maybe it's written for some of you, maybe some of you can relate to them. So with that, I'd like to ask you to, let's just pray real quick. Ask for God to come in here and bless us. Dear Father in heaven, I'm thankful for you, Lord. We're thankful for you. We're thankful that you're here, that you've told us you'll be here when there's a multitude of people that will come, 2 and 3, Lord. They're gathered in your name, you're here. And we're conscious and aware of that. And Lord, I'm nervous, but also thankful that you're going to take this message and you're going to speak to hearts. Either the words I say or the words I don't say, that they're going to fall upon hearts and the Holy Spirit can do his work here in this place. I thank you for your love, and in your name I pray. And all the children said, Amen. Okay, if you guys have your Bibles, go ahead and open them. And we're going to open to the New Testament, to the book of Luke, Matthew, Mark, Luke. It's the third gospel of the New Testament, third book of the New Testament. And it's chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. And this is, we're going to park it here for the most of the time. So you can actually just keep your books open to that, really. I might bounce around a little bit here and there, but for the most part, we're going to park it in this one passage. And this one story. By the way, I'm going to preface this story. So this week, when I was asked to preach, I was talking to my wife in the middle of the week, and I'm writing my sermon, working on it, the concepts, ideas, and I'm like, honey, I just don't know if I should be doing this story. And she's like, well, what are you doing your story on? I said, well, Martha and Mary, the story of Martha and Mary and Jesus coming over her house. And she's like, I was just reading about that today. And she reads me what she was just reading about. And then about an hour later, we're going to go have worship with the kids. And we listen to this Keys for Kids thing that's on the phone. I don't know if you guys ever heard, anybody have kids that listens to Keys for Kids? Nobody? We're the only ones. That's okay. It's like this thing you listen to on your phone, and it basically gives you a daily devotional for your children. It's pretty cool. It's like 5-10 minutes. Anyway, so she puts on the daily devotional for that day, and guess what it was? Martha and Mary. So I was like, okay. Okay, sure, I'll do that. So that's where we're at. So verse 38. This is a little rendition, a little picture, but so as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister Mary Magdalene, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you're worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Now you have to understand that, so the beginning of our passage, Martha, I'm going to interchange the two of them probably to my deficit, but Martha invites Jesus into her home. This is a good first move. She's like, man, this is her first encounter with Jesus. This is her first encounter, and she knows he's coming. She sees him coming, his disciples, his 12 boys that are with him, and she invites him into her house. So it's a good first move that she does, So she invites him into his house, good move. And in Eastern culture, it was Middle Eastern culture, it was customary to invite a weary traveler into your home. Any stranger, any foreigner, you saw them coming, it was a customary thing for you to be like, hey, you've been on the road, walking in your sandals, dirty, you probably need some food, you probably need some water. Foreigners and strangers were all reliant. Jesus was reliant upon the people that he encountered to provide food, water, and resources like that for him. They'd also wash their feet and things like that. There are quite a few instances of this taking place, actually, when you look in the Bible. You have Abraham, the story of Abraham. He encounters these 3 messengers, and he rushes out to them, and he bows before them, and he says, come to my house. It's very, very important in that custom. Come to my house. I want to provide you shelter. I want to provide you respite. I want to provide you a place to clean your feet and a good meal. You have the same thing, and actually, if you didn't provide someone with care, if you didn't provide a foreigner or somebody who was a weary traveler, it was actually more like an insult. You actually was almost like a slap to the face of that person who's traveling through. And you see a really good story about this taking place with David. David is hiding out from King Saul in 1 Samuel 20:25. He's hiding out, trying to preserve his life with his men, and he's been in a nearby field, protecting an area and protecting a man's sheep by the name of Nabal. And the Bible tells us that he was a very, very wealthy man. Now, after a time of doing this, David goes to Nabal, or actually sends his men to Nabal and says, "Hey, could you throw us a few bones? Could you give us a few resources?" And Nabal says, "Who's this David? Who's this? I don't know no David." So much so that he almost basically starts a war. And if it hadn't been for his wife, for Nabal's wife, Abigail, who comes to the rescue and basically goes and talks to David and says that her husband's a foolish man, David indicates and tells her that he would have killed every last male in Nabal's household. So, hospitality is important. In the New Testament, we have a sample of this taking place, and actually a correction, I'd say, that takes place that Jesus provides another correction on. And when we read in Luke 7:44, the story of Simon the leper, Mary Magdalene, and Jesus. Jesus has just been invited over to Simon's house, okay? And you're going to find out right now, we're going to find out in this verse exactly how Simon treats him. And then that's Jesus, he turned toward the woman and he said to Simon, "Do you see this woman? I came into your house and you didn't give me any water for my feet. But she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You didn't put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, and as her great love has shown." Jesus provides another, I'd say, gentle or rebuking correction to Simon, and is basically teaching him about hospitality. This is what's supposed to happen, and we see as we look at this customarily what should have taken place. Food, hospitality is important, but food in the Eastern culture was even more important. And what I mean by food is when you would sit around a table in the Eastern culture, it was a time to commune. It was almost like a covenantal commitment. We talk about covenantal things with that storyline. This is one of the areas in which you would sit around and you'd share. This wasn't like forks and knives kind of eating. This was like dipping your bread in the same bread that somebody else did, and your salivas are touching their salivas, and it's a little bit nasty happening there. If you're a germaphobe, that wouldn't work for my oldest son. He's a total germaphobe. But point is that it was this big communal thing that took place when you invited someone to eat with you. And so eating was important. As a matter of fact, you see that being super important when Jesus invites his disciples to the upper room and has something called the Last Supper with them, right? Where he invites them to this communal meal together. Food's important. A clean house is nice, and hospitality is important. But, and a big but. So she had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord listening to Jesus and what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. Martha's thinking about all the stuff that needs to be done. Mary's listening and Martha's distracted. Luke carefully here doesn't just talk about her doing stuff. He talks about her being distracted by the stuff she's doing. Do you guys follow? So it's not that she's serving, that's the thing he's correcting here. It's that her serving has distracted her from something. Why is Martha distracted? Well, let's think about it for a second. Let's take us back, and her house is probably a mess. There's no cell phones in those days. There's no phone calls being made prior to Jesus coming in. She probably hasn't cleaned her house. Right now she's got 13 dudes who are probably really dirty from the road, from traveling on foot, coming into her house, who now she has to clean the house. She has to provide them a place to clean their feet. She has to provide them now a meal, which probably wasn't prepared in advance. Bread has to be made. Lamb has to be probably cooked. Lentils have to be cooked. You get the point. There's a lot to do. And she's thinking about all these things that I have to do. I really like having people over my house. I was raised when I was little and kind of growing up, it was customary within my household to always have lots of people over. The church we attended, we used to always, every weekend we'd have a slew of people over our house. And my dad would always have a big barbecue, and it was always like a big thing, like get-togethers are fun. And so I love having people over my house. My wife likes having people over our house too, but there's a caveat to my wife having people over my house, and that is that the house be what? Clean. Spotless, clean, like Home and Gardens clean, right? Like you see in a magazine, you flip it open, that's what our house should look like for people to come. And so if people get invited and the house isn't clean, well, guess who's going to hear it a little bit later? That would be me. So the point is, she likes it clean. And husbands, I know you know what I'm talking about, right? Whenever there was that guest that was going to come, and my wife had an hour to prepare in advance for it, she'd be flying around the house at Mach 10 speed, going with the vacuum through, vacuuming and wiping with two hands and using her feet to do stuff. It's amazing to see that woman clean when she's in a crazy hurry. And you better keep the kids out of the way because they may get sucked up in the vacuum in the process. She's just moving right along. Anyways, the focus, right, is to get everything clean. And back to Martha. Martha's in this, she's in this kind of crazy cleaning mode herself. And then get this. So she's cleaning, she's doing all the work, right? And she looks as she's doing all this stuff, and she turns and she's like, Mary, hello? Want to help here? Do you know, I'd be like my wife running around and cleaning, and me just being like, hey, how you doing there, honey? Doing a good job. Looks good. I'd definitely be hearing that later, right? So she starts to kind of get aggravated and irritated and frustrated, all the ADEDs, at Mary, and starts to develop all these kind of negative feelings towards her. And then, check this out, she's like, okay, Mary, wait a second. I see Mary, she's at Jesus' feet, and Jesus is sitting next to her, and he's talking, and now I know Jesus sees her sitting there, and Jesus sees me working, and I'm working, and he sees me working, but she's sitting there, and how's that fair? And there's a dialogue going on in Martha's head right now. And so she turns to Jesus, and what does she tell him? She said, Lord, don't you care? Don't you care? What a question. If my wife asked me the question, don't you care? Husbands, would you think that would be a loaded question? Yes, it is a loaded question. It is a loaded question that Martha asks, Lord, don't you care? Don't you care about me? Don't you care about the things that I'm doing right now? Don't you care about the things that I'm concerned with? And it's funny that she gets caught up and we get caught up in the effort of what needs to be done, and we forget about the purpose of what we're doing. I can go and I can work long hours. I'm a retired fireman, and I used to go and I was gone from home 80% of the time, 70% of the time. I was always gone. I was either traveling to work, coming from work, at work, coming home from work, and then getting told to go back to work again. I was always gone. And so I can work long hours and provide and make my family comfortable by the financial means that I'm giving my family. But if I forget in my effort about the purpose of why I'm doing what I'm doing, well then, what's the point in what I'm doing, right? Or what if I'm serving my church and I'm all caught up in ministry and I'm all caught up in the things I need to do, but I've the how and the what has become more important than the who. Well, then what's the point of what I'm doing? We get caught in these like really wonky spots. I like that word, wonky. We start to make like these decisions on our own. We start to think about like how things should go, right? And you get Martha kind of heading in this trajectory, right? When she says, it's not working. She says, tell her to help me. Tell her to help me. Tell her. Jesus, tell her to help me. Can't you see I need help? I'm dying here, and you're just talking to her, and she's sitting around talking herself. Now, Jesus could have, at that moment, been like, Martha, are you serious right now? Like, do I care? Tell her to help? Like, really? But Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus is a whole lot more tactful than I am. And he says, Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things. Now, one of the things when you see a repeat of a word in the Bible, a repeat of a name specifically, he says, Martha, Martha, there's a correction coming, and you know this because there's this pattern that's created within the Bible of whenever God repeats a name, there's about to be a big correction that's going to happen. You see this happen in the story of Abraham in Genesis when Abraham's about to go kill his son. And he's holding that knife up, about to kill his son, and you hear, Abraham, Abraham. It's not what I'm like. Don't do that. Or you hear in the New Testament, Jesus, he's looking at Jerusalem. He's sad because what's taking place in Jerusalem, and the leaders are all wanting to kill him, and he's sad, and he looks over Jerusalem. He says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the people who kill the prophets and everybody who's sent there, how I wanted to bring you in underneath my wing like a hen brings in her chicks. So the point is, Jesus is saying, Martha, Martha, you're worried, you're upset about many things. I like to talk about two words here in what Jesus says that are very, very important. Worried and upset. My Bible says, in the NIV that I was reading out of, says, Martha, Martha, you're worried and upset. There's other translations that say different things. But the words here are, the Greek words at least, are merimneo, that's a fun one to say, and turbazo, that's a fun one. I like turbazo. So let's talk about those two words. Merimneo. So Jesus says, Martha, you are merimneo about stuff right now. Merimneo just means anxious. You're super anxious about what's taking place right now. Do you know that we are living in a period right now where anxiety has hit epidemic proportions? There's a study from the National Institute on Health that says nearly 1/3 of adults in the U.S. will grapple with an anxiety disorder at some point in their lives. 1/3. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. And what's crazy to me is they're treating anxiety with benzodiazepines, which are strong drugs for temporary. They're treating with these serotonin inhibitors. They're treating it with all sorts of stuff. And they're even treating with beta blockers. Do you know what beta blockers are? Beta blockers are drugs for your heart, for cardiac patients, that make your heart not beat fast. So they're giving this to people with anxiety, prescribing it to them. And the long-term effects are unknown because it's kind of a newer thing to prescribe for someone who doesn't have any heart problems, to provide them beta blockers. Anyways, the point is that there's lots of prescriptions that are being given to people for anxiety instead of dealing with the root problem. Now, I'd like to ask a question. Why are we so anxious? Let's just think about that for a second. Why are we so anxious as a population? What's taking place in our life that we are so anxious? I like to just, imagine for me a moment. Close your eyes, whatever you need to do. What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? Do you look at this thing? Everybody's got them. Does anybody not have a smartphone? One person. You don't have a smartphone. Two people. And you got a flip phone, huh? You got one of them flip things? It's because they don't destruct. You can drop those things from like 100 feet up and they're amazing, right? Hard to text on though, hard to get on the web. Point is those smartphones, man, we are on our smartphones all the time. From the minute we go to sleep, that's probably the last thing we see is that phone. To the minute we go to wake up, we are reaching for what? What time is it? Oh, I got a text message. Oh, hey, an email came in. Oh, hey, what's on Facebook right now? Oh, Craigslist? Like by the time you know it, like you're half hour into it and you're like, how did I was just turning off my alarm, right? It's like this, they don't call them cell phones for nothing. Cell, C-E-L-L, prison. I'll let that sink in. We get locked, right? We get just trapped. It's crazy. We're just like, it's insane. And maybe 6 months ago, something to that effect, I had my nieces and nephews had come over from down south, down in Arizona, and we were all, they came in to hang out. They wanted to hang out for a few days. I'm like, sweet, let's all hang out together. So we go to a beach house, and we're hanging out at this beach house they had rented. And I go and I'm like, hey guys, I'm sit down on the couch. And I'm like, hey, how's everybody doing? And I'm sitting down, and there's 6 teenagers in the house, and boys and girls, and we're sitting on couches, and they are all doing this. I'm like, how are you guys doing? We're good. What are you guys doing? Oh, we're hanging out. Like, the beach is like right there, right? It's like, they're literally texting, and the beach is 100 yards from them, and they're staring at it. Like, what's the point of renting a beach house if you just go sit there texting the whole time? And no joke, they were actually texting each other, sitting next to each other, texting each other. And we're not talking pictures, like messages, like, it's like, can you text it faster than you can actually, some people, I've watched Allie text, she's amazing. She's like texting like this, like without even like looking. She's got like texting superpowers. It's crazy. Anyways, I think we're anxious because we are always we're always being stimulated. We always have all this information that's just coming at us, right? And do you know that because of smartphones, they've actually been creating new anxiety diagnoses? Did you know that? One of them I discovered when I was trying to learn about, things about the sermon. It was FOMO. Have you heard of it? FOMO. Fear of missing out. It's a straight-up anxiety disorder they're prescribing medication for. FOMO. I'm FOMO. I got fear of missing out. There's this other one that's crazy. And tell me if you've, raise your hand if you've got this one, okay? Please interact if this has ever happened to you. You ready? You ready for it? Has this ever happened? Phantom vibration syndrome. You had your phone in your pocket, right? And you feel bzz, bzz, bzz. And you're like, oh, you go to grab it. There's nothing there. There's no message. What's going on? It happens to everybody who has a phone. So how many people, let me see, raise your hands. Who's it happened to? Lots of people, right? Right? Do you know what that is? Do you know what they say that is? The psychologists, and they've been doing all the studies on the brain and stuff. They say it's your brain tricking you into wanting to use your cell phone, wanting to be stimulated by what your cell phone does to your brain. The chemicals that are generated in your brain by reading your smartphone, your brain actually creates this vibration sensation so that you actually pick up your phone. Crazy. I was like, what? It's insane. I know we've talked about cell phones a lot, but the point isn't the cell phones themselves, professionals, they want to blame smartphones, and maybe they're right, maybe rightfully so that they are to blame a little bit. But the point isn't that it's not the phones themselves; it's the information that we are overloaded with. It's the stimuli, it's distractions. We're constantly being bombarded with information everywhere. We have too much information, right? And because we have all this information, because we have all these things flying at us, we have turbazo. Jesus said, you're anxious and you're turbazo, Martha. You're turbazo. Turbazo, which some of the Bibles just define as worried, troubled. Man, it is such an intense word. It's crazy. It's troubled, but with this element of a violent mob. You have a violent mob going on in your brain right now, is what Jesus is saying. You have this violence that's occurring within your brain. Bombs are going off. Martha's worried and upset and anxious. Last I checked, mobs weren't a good thing. They're a bad thing. Jesus tells Martha, he's like, look, you're anxious about a lot of things, and they're crowding your mind and your judgment. And there's this big violence that's taking place in your brain. I'd like to ask you guys, have you ever had a crowded mind? Mine has. Mine's crowded all the time. Started off my story telling you, I'm crowded. It's always have a million. You're running a business, Rob. What do you got going on in your brain? Like, pew, 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 pew. Oh man, like, okay, what's next? Like, should I buy this? Oh, I want to sell this. Oh, do I need this over here? Oh, well, what about my family members? And everything starts to crisscross and starts to point in different directions. And before you know it, it's like a plate of spaghetti that's just fallen on the floor, and you're trying to figure out where the spaghetti travels to. Lots of stuff going on in the brain. What I'll say, though, what Jesus, I think, is trying to point out here, and this is my own words, of course, just trying to creatively say what I think Jesus is saying. He's basically saying, look, her busyness has become her business. Everything she's worried about has become the most important thing to her. Or said another way, this is a big one for me when it hit me out. Her worship has turned into workship. Boom. It's like, goodness gracious. Man, she's invited Jesus in, right? But her work has completely replaced the worship of the person she's looking at. She's supposed to be looking to. She's focused on all of her guests' needs. She's focused on Jesus' needs when Jesus is just telling her, look, you just need to chill out. Come hang out with us. Come listen to what I have to tell you. Come here. Come sit down with me. Let's have a conversation. Let's have some communal conversation. Let's make a friendship here. It's the first time she's met him. Jesus tells Martha, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. And Mary has chosen what is better. And that will not be taken away from her. When someone is thinking about following Jesus, sometimes they start to think about all the do's and the don'ts, right? Should I do this? Should I not do that? Should I, you fill in the blank, ... Should I stop smoking, drinking, drugs, right? Those are things you shouldn't do. But the point is, we're thinking about these things prior to, a lot of times, the things that we need to slough off or the things that we need to do prior to following Jesus. We have to have it, maybe we have to feel like we have to have it all together, have it all together Christian. We got to have everything look pretty and look nice. And my shirt has to be wrinkle-free. My collar has to be straight. My collars are never straight. They always bend up for some reason. Anyways, so I asked the question, should I give money to the poor? Yeah, you should. It's a good thing to do. Should we feed the homeless? Great. Yes, we should all do that. Should we eat healthy? Absolutely. How about serve people, right? Those are all good things as well. This might be heretical to you, but I'm going to say it at the risk of it. If you do any of those things, if you feed the poor, if you feed the widow, if you give money away, if you serve your church, if you want to eat healthy and you do it out of guilt, Don't do it. Drop it. Get rid of it. Throw it away. For another day at least. But if you do those things because you fall in love with Jesus, and you fall in love with God and the things he's done for you, and you love your fellow humans, and you just can't help but give, then do it. That's the right attitude to have. That's what I believe, at least. So Jesus is basically telling Martha, Martha, come join the party. Come sit with me. Come hang out with me. You know, it's funny. I've heard people, and I've even said it myself, man, if Jesus was around, think about what Jesus, like, the disciples were so blessed to have Jesus in their life, to just walk with him and be with him for those 30, however many years they walked with him. 3 years, technically, right? What an amazing opportunity to walk with him. But we're super blessed in this country we live in. We can read a Bible, no problem. Those are the words of God, man. And I forget within my own head, those are the words of God, because it's so accessible to me. It's not something that is hard to get at. It's not something that I have to work hard to do. But if we lived in another country where we weren't allowed to read the Bible, man, we would cherish that thing. We'd be like, hiding it. Sometimes when things are so easily accessible, we forget about their importance. So Martha, she begins in this really good spot. Her focus, though, is incorrect. She's distracted by being too busy. I have to be super honest, like I said in the beginning. I think this sermon was written for me. I wrote it for me. Jesus helped me write it for me. I hope it's set in some of your hearts and you guys have felt some of these things and you can relate to them. But man, I was really convicted writing this. I've been so busy running a business, so busy running a family of 4, so busy trying to do ministry, so busy doing the things of life that I've forgotten about the things that are important. And to be honest, I've been so distracted that it's made me angry, it's made me frustrated, and I'm crying out to God. I'm like, Lord, help me. Help me. But I'm turning back around and like, this is how you can help me, Lord. You can help me do this. So how about you? How about you? So here we are, New Year's 2020. 2020 vision, right? Clear future. Maybe you want to lose a few lbs. Maybe you want to be a little bit healthier. Maybe you want to read a book, a new career. I would say that is super great, whatever it is. But I urge you, and I urge myself to remember the purpose of what we're doing is more important than the actual act of what we're doing in itself. The purpose is important. Do not let the method become more important than the purpose. Let's not be distracted. Let's sit at Jesus' feet like Mary did. Let him speak to you and then share his words with those around.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. We hope that message was a blessing to you. God's Word is powerful. It penetrates into our minds, into our hearts, and brings about transformation in every aspect of our lives. Listen, we don't want you to miss any content, so again, we want to encourage you to click on subscribe and track with the content that's going to be coming out week after week. And if you'd like to partner with us in this global ministry of taking the gospel of Christ to the whole world, we want to invite you to become a partner in this ministry. Click Give and join with us.